Good morning, friends, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Stony Brook. My name is Maureen Shaiman, and Wendy Engelhardt and I are happy to be your worship associates this morning for our fellow member, Colleen Rudman. Our incoming interim minister, Reverend Madeline Campbell, will be joining us as of August 15th. Our Director of Religious Education is Deb Little. For information about our in-person religious education class schedule for children and how to contact Deb, please see our website at UUFSB.org. This is the second in our, this is now probably the fifth in our series of summer services, which will run through July and August. As has become our summer tradition, these services are led by lay members of our congregation and are based on a theme chosen by our worship associates, which this year is a book which has especially influenced or inspired me. Colleen will share a thought-provoking book entitled Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. I offer a special welcome to any of you who are here with us for the first time today, and I hope that you will find among us inspiration for living and nourishment for your spirit. We're glad to have you with us. And since our services do vary each week, we hope that you will return often to get to know us as a community of faith. These summer services are really a chance to get to know each other better. Unitarian Universalism, as a living tradition, is committed to freedom of belief and oriented toward inclusion, interdependence, and justice. You can find additional information about the principles we strive to live by on our website and on our denomination's website, uua.org. We are a congregation of seekers who have come from a variety of faith traditions, and we welcome those of all ages, abilities, and identities who are searching for a spiritual home. If you are attending this service virtually, please watch the chat for the order of service and a few important links during the service, especially the visitors and the feedback forms. We would love to hear from you. After the service, you can leave this virtual space, go to our webpage, and click the link for smaller group chats in order to visit with a smaller group of friendly people. I have just two riveting announcements to share with you this morning. First, this coming Tuesday, August 9th at 8 p.m., we will be having our monthly labyrinth walk right here in the sanctuary. You can see the labyrinth on the floor. This will be special because we will have Annie Mark playing her harp as we walk in the candlelight. If you've never walked a labyrinth before, now is your opportunity to try this peaceful walk. Linda Michael will be your guide. You need to call or email her to reserve, and there are posters with contact information in the lobby and in the hallway. And second, the Shawl Ministry will not meet on Tuesday, August 9th, but instead will resume on the second Thursday of each month, starting on September 8th. Let us now enter together into the sacred space of worship with the sounding of the morning bell. Please remain silent until the sound of the bell can no longer be heard.
Judd Kramarczyk will light our chalice, and I'll read these words by Erica A. Hewitt. To be a Unitarian Universalist means we'll never be done with the work of telling the truth about oppression, the work of resisting any laws, policies, or practices that deny anyone their humanity, the work of stubbornly seeking out the spark of the divine in each other, no matter what. The work of creating heaven on earth. To be a Unitarian Universalist also means we are not alone in this work. We are not alone because of our promises to one another. We are not alone because we are companions on the journey. We grow ourselves into allies, helping one another set free, because none of us is truly free until we are all free.
It is my great pleasure to introduce to you this morning our service leader and my friend, Colleen Rudman. Colleen was born in Brooklyn and moved to Oceanside at the age of 8. She attended Stony Brook University for both undergraduate and graduate work, where she got her master's in literature. She taught at Suffolk, Queensborough, and Dowling. In 1977, she moved into technical writing and editing, working mainly at Northrop Grumman, Thomson Reuters, and Altice, aka Cablevision. In 1984, she married Stan Rudman, and in 1986, they started coming to the fellowship. They had 2 daughters, Chelsea and Jillian, who both went through RE here. She has served UUFSB in nearly every capacity, from RE committee to nominating committee, from board member and VP to worship associate with Reverend Kate and then Reverend Margie, from clothing swaps to fundraiser extraordinaire. For the last decade, she's been an anchor of the communications committee and newsletter team and has been part of the Sunday worship team, tech team, since the pandemic began. Without her, I fear the place would fall apart. She has been happily retired since last May, and besides her volunteer work for the fellowship, keeps busy with her geographically dispersed family, yoga, reading, traveling the US and Europe, gardening, walking, vegan cooking, and puzzling. She co-started a Friends book group that is now in its 21st year, as well as an ongoing movie discussion group at the onset of COVID. She loves books and is happy to share her thoughts about thinking fast and slow this morning.
Thank you, Maureen. Our opening words are by the Reverend Dr. Richard Gilbert. Listen. Listen to what others have to say. There is wisdom in all you meet. Listen to the sounds of nature. It speaks and sings and makes music for those who pay attention. Listen to the impulses of your spirit. Take time to hear your inner yearnings, that still small voice drowned in the raucous shout. Listen, this is a noisy world. Perhaps this year we will listen.
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, if I had a mind to think, I might do some damage. Mix my thoughts in the kitchen sink and make myself a sandwich. Oh, I might hock my ham and cheese, buy a gun and shoot the breeze, bring the sun down to its knees and make another morning. Oh, if I had a mind to think, I might never gamble, never touch that fine cornet, or do the muskrat ramble. Oh, I might just stay here in bed, have the sense to plan ahead. I see the sky is getting red, sore like it's been crying. if I had a mind to think, I might take up jogging, leave behind them chili dogs, take books to help my noggin. Oh, I don't know how I got this old, oh, how the winter got so cold, and now the morning's turning gold, and I should stop my dreaming.
Thank you so much, Mike and Ron. El gato. Our fourth principle is that we affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. This means that I have to search in real time, right now, minute by minute, even second by second, all day and every day for truth and meaning. The voice in my head that tells me what I should do next must be re-examined every day, every hour, every minute, because the true meaning of a situation lies deeply concealed beneath a great number of possibilities. What is true can change into something new and different at any time, and facts must be re-examined over and over again to determine their meaning. Searching for truth and meaning in real time is hard. It's easy to avoid the search. Just rely on authority or fall back on what's been said and done before. Fall back on habit, on doctrine, on dogma, on tribalism and all the other isms. But the responsibility to search for the truth and meaning and to act accordingly is not a burden for me. It is a gift. We are all born to do this. We in the world we live in are constructed in such a way that we have to make sense of things again and again, so that we can live with as much grace as we can under the daily pressure of our lives. So I'm going to go out into this beautiful summer day and relish the fact that I have the opportunity and the obligation to search as best as I can for truth and meaning. Please stand and body your spirit to sing the first 3 verses of hymn number 1054 in the teal hymnal or on your screen, Let This Be a House of Peace.
was a little tricky one. It is time now for our meditation, first in words and then in silence. Joanne will bring us out of the silent meditation with hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. You may want to have your hymnal open to that page. Day by day, month by month, year by year, we are confronted with all that we do not know, that we do not understand, that we do not grasp. Sometimes we are humbled by what we do not know and say, this universe is more grand and more beautiful than I ever could have imagined. And I give thanks for the blessing of being here and seeing, hearing, and experiencing all that is so wonderful around and in me. Sometimes we are saddened by what we do not know and say, we need to have the burden of hurt and suffering removed from us. Grant us the courage, the wisdom, and fortitude to bear the pain of living. Sometimes we are angered by what we do not know and say, in the name of justice and compassion, give us the strength and ability to right the wrongs, for no person in the world deserves this. Sometimes we are made joyous by what we do not know and say, Spirit of Life who blesses our world, we rejoice and cheer for our glorious life. Sometimes we are made curious by this knowledge and say, holy and inexplicable is this life. Let me continue to search for the unknown in myself and others.
It is our spiritual practice to share our offering plate with a deserving social justice recipient. The link is in the chat now to donate online. Here in the sanctuary, all bills and coins will be shared 50-50 between UUFSB and the social justice recipient, unless you instruct us differently. If you write a check or donate online, please instruct us how much is to go to the social justice and how much to your pledge. During the summer months, we are focusing on hunger issues on Long Island. Our shared plate recipient for the month of August is Bethel Hobbs Community Farm. This farm was established by the Hobbs family in the early part of the 20th century, and it was the last African-American-owned farm on Long Island. Upon the death of Alfred Hobbs in 1996, the property was left to Bethel AME Church and is now managed as a 401c3. It provides an average of 30,000 pounds of fresh, organically grown produce to local food pantries and soup kitchens. Their education center hosts events for small groups, a community garden with garden plots for individuals, and a wheelchair-accessible garden with raised beds. You can go to their farm stand on Saturdays and also participate in their community-supported agricultural program. It's not too late to sign up for the fall. Please offer your generous support to Bethel Hobbs Community Farm as they continue to plant the seeds of hope.
Don't jump to conclusions. It always brings illusions. So be careful, gals and guys. Take a tip and you'd be wise if you want to minimize confusion. Don't jump to conclusions. Now in the city where I live, I had a careless friend who started crossing streets all happily. He thought that 'cause the light was green, no car would cross his path. Oh, but that was where he's wrong, unfortunately. Because he jumped and got contusions by jumping to conclusions. So be careful, all you guys. Take a tip and you'd be wise if you want to minimize confusion. Don't jump to conclusions. There is a UU fellowship in Stony Brook, New York, where a corps of volunteers do most of the work. So if you don't get to it thinking someone else will do it, you may just wind up feeling like a jerk. Don't jump to that conclusion. Don't harbor that delusion. So be careful, folks of all genders. Think about how it will end if you want to be a part of the solution. Don't jump to conclusions. You heard about the race between the tortoise and the hare, and how the hare sat snoozing in the sun. Well, this is the exception to our rule, 'cause Mr. Hare, he should have kept on jumping till he won. He should have jumped to that conclusion.
I don't get it. That's confusing.
I'm just kidding, all you guys. What I said before was wise if you want to minimize confusion. Don't jump to conclusions. When a problem comes to you, take the time to think it through. And whatever else you do, don't jump to conclusions.
That was great, you guys. Thank you so much. On a sunny afternoon in August 2017, we were sitting on the deck of my stepson's house in West Hampton Beach. The rolling ocean could be seen just over the dunes behind the house, and a few seagulls graced the blue sky in gentle flight. Clad in bathing suits, t-shirts, and beach cover-ups, we sat around the long table with books, Kindles, notes, and serious expressions. It was our first extended family book discussion, and we were ready to talk about Daniel Kahneman's thought-provoking work, Think Fast and Slow. Why this selection? Well, my husband Stan, who's back there, hi Stan, had read it earlier in the summer, and it so impressed him that midway through the book, he had jumped online and ordered copies for all 5 of his children. We all agreed it would make for a worthwhile discussion. So my appreciation for the book is actually twofold. Primarily, Kahneman's insights about how we humans make decisions impressed me deeply, made for fascinating reading, and caused me to reflect on my own decision-making processes. Secondarily, the book initiated the irregular series of family discussions that bring us together in a unique and, I think, important way. Daniel Kahneman is an Israeli-American psychologist, notable for his work on the psychology of judgment and decision-making, as well as behavioral economics, for which he was awarded the 2002 Nobel Prize in Economics. Thinking Fast and Slow, published in 2011, synthesizes decades' worth of research, both his own and that of other psychologists and economists. Kahneman's thesis is that people have too much confidence in human judgment. Not only do we misassess situations, but we do so following fairly predictable patterns. A Boston Globe review described the book as, quote, a sweeping, compelling tale of just how easily our brains are bamboozled. Kahneman's goal in this book was to change the way we think about ourselves and the world around us. Today, I would like to share key points of Thinking Fast and Slow, and then reflect on what we can do with this information. Kahneman defines 2 modes of thought, which he refers to as System 1 and System 2, the fast and slow thinking of the book's title. He proposes that we too often rely on our intuitive, fast thinking, when slower, logical thinking is required. Let's look at these systems more closely. And just to be clear, these systems are just constructs and do not apply to any physical areas of the brain. When you see this face, you automatically and effortlessly know that this woman is angry. Kahneman points out this conclusion doesn't feel like something you did, but something that happened to you. This is characteristic of intuitive thinking. It just happens. Your understanding of my expression is an example of System 1 or fast thinking. Other examples of System 1 thinking: the answer to 2 + 2. Orient to the source of a sudden loud noise. 17 times 24 equals, although you know immediately that this is a multiplication problem, the solution does not come to mind. You might be able to work it out in your head, but this would be deliberate, effortful, and orderly work. This is an example of System 2, or slow thinking. Do not attempt to do this problem while you're trying to make a left turn into traffic. By the way, it turns out that System 2 thinking is measurable. Studies show that pupils dilate, heart rate increases, and blood glucose levels drop when you engage in this slow, effortful thinking. The author says, when we think of ourselves, we identify with System 2, the conscious, reasoning self that has beliefs, makes choices, and decides what to think about and what to do. Although System 2 believes itself to be where the action is, the automatic System 1 is the hero of the story. 20% of our energy intake goes to the brain, and despite what your teenager tells you, dedicating energy to thinking about one thing means that energy is not available for other things. For example, trying to work out the double digits multiplication problem while you are running will inevitably cause you to slow down. Try it. And because slow thinking is expensive, the body is programmed to avoid it. In short, System 2 is lazy and mental effort is aversive. Psychologists believe that all of us live much of our life guided by System 1 impressions. Problems occur when system 1 is unfavorably influencing a system 2 decision, or when system 2 is left out of the decision-making process altogether. Kahneman points out that system 1 thinking is critical from an evolutionary point of view. If early humans heard a strange, loud noise in the bushes, the instinct to immediately run was probably a good one. Survival depended on the ability to react quickly to a novel situation. The ones who needed to think slowly and carefully about the noise probably didn't survive to become our ancestors. One more example of system 1 thinking. A bat and a ball together cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? What number comes to your mind? Many people would immediately say 10 cents. Your mind, system 1, comes up with an answer that is intuitive, appealing, and wrong. Do the math now. 10 cents plus $1.10 equals $1.20. The correct answer is 5 cents for the ball and $1.05 for the bat. Kahneman noted that over 50% of Harvard, MIT, and Princeton students gave the intuitive wrong answer, with over 80% failure rates at less selective universities. He uses this example to illustrate that many people follow the law of least effort. The brain seeks coherence. We prefer not to see ambiguity. System 1 will make sense of the situation and suppress any uncertainty. When we look at this first slide, we read A, B, C. When we look at the second slide, we read 12, 13, 14. In fact, the middle character is identical in both slides, and therefore ambiguous, but we seek to make a coherent pattern. Conscious doubt is not in the repertoire of System 1. So I would like to introduce you to 4 of the concepts that Kahneman uses to illustrate the many ways in which our brain is tricked into making decisions, often unwise or incorrect. He describes the brain as a machine for jumping to conclusions. I would note that in the interest of hopefully making these concepts clear to you today, I'm using the simplest examples, but encourage you to read the book for more detailed studies that explore the concepts more deeply. The first concept is priming. What you have recently been or are currently exposed to affects your understanding. For an example, Maureen and Wendy are going to each show half the room a word. Then I'll ask you to all fill in the missing letter in a word fragment I will show you. There are little cards and pencils around on the chairs for this purpose. Don't say the word out loud that you're seeing. Well, just read the word. I'm going to show you a word to fill in. Everyone's seeing the word. I didn't show you yet. Okay. So everyone's seen the word. Everyone's seen one word. Now, I would ask you to write this word fragment and fill in the missing letter in the word. Okay. How are we doing? Okay, I'm going to ask for a show of hands. How many people wrote soup? How many people wrote soap? No, you use you. There is more soup over here? People at home, feel free to write your word in the chat if you'd like. The expected result is if you saw the word eat, you were more likely to complete the fragment as the word soup. If you saw the word wash, you were more likely to complete the fragment as soap. I'm not sure that this happened here, but maybe a little bit. Eat worked. Okay, thanks, Maureen. This is called the priming effect. The idea of eat primes the idea of soup. The idea of wash primes the idea of soap. Could you leave the cards on the chairs? I want to collect them later for my own curiosity. Here is one of my favorite studies on the topic of priming. How much money employees put in an office coffee room honesty box was influenced by the poster hung above the honesty box. This one's a little hard to see, but on the first week, the bottom week, labeled 1, a poster with a pair of eyes hung above the honesty box. We can see this generated, looking out on the x-axis, this generated the most donations. The next week, the poster was switched to a picture of flowers, and donations dropped. For 10 weeks, the posters alternated between eyes and flowers. We can see that weeks with eyes generated more money. This is something that is happening to people. System 1 is engaged and we are not even aware. Our associative memory is linking the eyes with being watched and wanting to do good things. You are a rational, reasonable you and like to think it doesn't happen to you, but it does. We have all made ethical decisions based on what we think is logic, but we are not immune to priming. The second concept is cognitive ease. The main function of System 1, Kahneman writes, is to maintain and update a model of your personal world, which represents what is normal in it. If things are going well, that is, System 1 assesses that no extra effort is required from System 2, your brain experiences cognitive ease. Things are normal. The situation or stimulus feels familiar, feels true, feels good, feels effortless. However, if the situation or stimulus feels strange, unclear, or requires effort, we experience cognitive strain. The brain prefers ease. Let's look at one of these characteristics of cognitive ease, familiarity. Kahneman states, a reliable way to make people believe in falsehoods is frequent repetition, because familiarity is not easily distinguished from truth. Let me say that again. Familiarity is not easily distinguished from truth. Authoritarian institutions and marketers have always known this fact. I know we can all think of examples of politicians who have repeated and repeated untruths until at least some segment of the population is convinced of their truth. The more we see something, the more we trust it. Thus, in an election, if we haven't done the work to research the candidate, we are most likely to trust and vote for the one whom we have heard about the most. It takes effort to stop and ask oneself, is this the best option or just the one I've been frequently exposed to? That is, to challenge your System 1 judgment. A third mechanism that Kahneman describes as substitution, answering an easier question instead of the harder question that was asked. Again, this happens automatically. We don't notice that we have shifted to the easier question. Here's a few examples. How happy are you with your life these days? A little bit complicated, but what is my mood right now? That's easy. How much would you contribute to save an endangered species? Think about that. How much emotion do I feel when I think of dying dolphins? I know that. How should financial advisors who prey on the elderly be punished? Well, it's easier to think, how much anger do I feel when I think of financial predators? Substituting a simpler problem for a more complex one is another example of the human brain seeking coherence over ambiguity. I readily know how I feel about financial predators or dying dolphins, or how I feel emotionally right now. The last concept I want to introduce you is what you see is all there is. We jump to conclusions based on limited evidence, what Kahneman calls what you see is all there is. He invites us to consider the following. Will Mindick be a good leader? She is intelligent and strong. Without any further information, what you see is all there is. System 1, with cognitive ease, jumps to the conclusion, yes, sounds like she will be. Of course, the next two adjectives describing Mindick could have been corrupt and cruel, causing us to modify the story we have constructed about Mindick. Let's talk now about biases. A bias is a cognitive error or misleading tendency that is very difficult or even impossible to get rid of. Probably most of us have seen the Mueller-Wire optical illusion. Even though we know the lines are of equal length, we cannot help but see the bottom line is longer. Similarly, Kahneman concludes that it is difficult, although not impossible, for people to overcome their cognitive biases. Let's look at a few of these. I want to briefly describe 3 kinds of biases that Kahneman writes about. The first bias is anchoring. Anchoring occurs when people are trying to estimate an unknown quantity and they are first presented with some initial value. The anchoring effect simply refers to the tendency to base decision-making on the first piece of information that you are presented with. For example, was Gandhi more or less than 114 years old when he died? How old was he when he died? Was Gandhi more or less than 35 years old when he died? How old was he when he died? If you were offered the first pair of questions, you will come up with a much higher estimate of his age at death than if you were offered the second pair. You are anchored to the suggested number. You probably know that he was younger than 114 and older than 35, but your answer is influenced by the suggested age. The answer, by the way, is 78. Kahneman points out that powerful anchoring effects are found in decisions that people make about money, such as when they choose how much to contribute to a cause. In a study following an offshore oil spill, participants were asked to make an annual contribution to save seabirds from future oil spills. Some of the participants were asked the anchoring question, would you be willing to pay $5? Before the point-blank question of exactly how much they would contribute it. For other participants, the anchor was $400. Where the anchoring amount was only $5, contributions averaged $20. Where it was $400, the average rose to $143. Budget Drive Committee, take note. The second bias is called framing. Framing relies on the fact that different ways of presenting the same information often evoke different emotions. Consider, the odds of survival 1 month after surgery are 90%. Mortality within 1 month after surgery is 10%. The first statement feels more reassuring. System 1 is rarely indifferent to emotional words. Survival is good. Mortality is bad. Doctors at Harvard Medical School were presented with statistics about the outcomes for 2 treatments for lung cancer, surgery and radiation. 5-year survival rates clearly favor surgery, but in the short term, surgery is riskier than radiation. Half the doctors read the statistics in terms of survival, and half in terms of mortality rates, just as we see on the slide. Surgery was much more popular in the former frame, 84% of the physicians chose it, than in the latter, where only 50% chose it. Kahneman concluded that medical training evidently is no defense against the power of framing. The third and last bias I will mention is the peak-end rule. It seems that our memories of positive and negative experiences are dependent upon 2 things. What we were feeling at the moment, the most extreme or peak point, and how the experience ended. The memories are not, as one might expect, based on the experience as a whole. This points to a difference between the experiencing self and the remembering self. A classic example is childbirth. Memories of childbirth are strongly influenced by the peak and the ending rather than the duration of the labor. The positive memory of a baby being born can outweigh the impact of the length of the pain endured during the process. After my own 36-hour labor with my first baby, I can completely attest to this. If you attend a concert with poor sound quality or performance, yet the concert ends with your favorite song, your memory of the experience overall will be more positive. On the negative side, if you experience a positive date night with your spouse, yet end with a 2-minute disagreement, the argument will taint your memory of the whole evening. Can we trust the experts? Which is more accurate? Clinical predictions based on the subjective impressions of trained professionals, or statistical predictions using algorithms? In one study, trained counselors were asked to predict the grades of college freshmen. They interviewed every student for 45 minutes, had access to their high school grades, several aptitude tests, and 4-page personal statements. The statistical algorithm used only the high school grades and a single aptitude test. It turned out that the formula was more accurate than the counselors about 80% of the time. Clinical psychologists reacted with shock and disbelief. More than 200 subsequent studies have shown favorable results for the algorithm. Why are experts inferior to algorithms? In part because they tend to add complexity when simplicity is actually better. But also because humans are, quote, incorrigibly inconsistent in making summary judgments of complex information. Experienced radiologists who evaluate chest x-rays as normal or abnormal contradict themselves 20% of the time when they see the same picture on different occasions. Such inconsistency is probably due to the extreme contents dependency of System 1. For example, the prospects of a convict being granted parole have been shown to be affected by the time between food breaks for the parole judges. A hungry judge is not a thoughtful judge. If you have seen or read Moneyball, this is an example of the use of data outperforming the intuition of baseball talent scouts. So, what good is knowing all this? As I have indicated, I was captivated by this book and its conclusions. But what are we to do with this information? UUs, I would assert, identify strongly with our rationality, with our reasoning capabilities, and like to think we exercise good judgment. Our fourth principle states we believe in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and I dare say we think we are pretty good at this. But is it true, as Kahneman asserts, that we over-rely on our intuitions, which are often incorrect? We may not like to think that our brains are being lazy, or that we are averse to slow thinking and jump to conclusions, or that our intuition suffers from biases. But we need to discern when we can trust our intuition and when not. Why do a vast majority of UUs support an eighth principle? If all UUs were, in fact, completely free from biases around race and had no investment on any level in white supremacy, why indeed would we need a principle that articulates a commitment to the dismantling of white supremacy? Biases can exist automatically on a System 1 level that we don't see. Being well-intentioned doesn't mean the biases aren't there. In his service reflections in late May, Dave Tarbell referred to unconscious racism, which can get in the way of our seeing the world accurately. We think we are seeing the world as it is, but in fact, Dave said, we add interpretation to the basic data of what our eyes show us. Buried in the bones of our culture are innumerable small elements of racism. Kahneman says that we can be blind to the obvious, and we are also blind to our blindness. System 2 thinking is required to root out and eliminate concealed elements of racism and other biases. Kahneman acknowledges that it's difficult to get control over System 1. It takes hard work. We all know that change is hard, but not impossible and sometimes required. Consider also that our fellowship is now in a period of transition. Are there ways in which we as a congregation are using fast thinking when perhaps now is a time to use some slow thinking? Might we be guilty of what you see is all there is? Or are there other ways of doing things that we have not allowed ourselves to consider? It is exciting to think about that possibility, even if it might be slow and effortful. It is clear by now that the author believes that people are confident in judgments that are not necessarily true. This is the way we have always been doing it, so it must be the best way is not necessarily valid. Meanwhile, how did the family book discussion turn out? Well, we were taken aback at many of the author's findings. We shared favorite studies and most surprising results. We listened to each other, really listened. So often around the dinner table, my family members excel at cooperative overlap, which might be taken as just a good spin on interrupting, or apparently for many New Yorkers at least, an integral part of conversation. See Deborah Tannen's book, Conversational Style, for more on that topic. At any rate, we talked and listened to each other. Did anyone have takeaways from the book that went beyond the pool deck that afternoon? My daughter Chelsea recently shared, the biggest effect was making me more aware of my own biases. Biases are very real, especially the endgame effect. It is easy to trick your brain because it is using shortcuts all the time. We don't see that scenario X is not the same as scenario Y. My stepdaughter Meryl recollected the study she found particularly surprising. I remember how the Israeli judges' decisions were affected by their hunger level. This was entirely shocking, especially for judges. We are all so human, and yet we like to believe we are not. In early 2020, I recommended Thinking and Fast to the fellowship book group. Member Marie Baltz was also much taken with the book, and just this week told me how she vividly remembers the two-digit multiplication problem and how you can't try to figure it out and make a left turn into traffic at the same time. The problem crystallized this message for her. System 2 thinking forces us to focus our attention, and it is hard work. I hope my talk has served to raise awareness of the possible unreliability of your own intuitive System 1 thinking, making you slow down and perhaps ask for reinforcement from System 2. This can apply to you as an individual and also to us collectively as a community. I also hope your interest has been piqued and you will read Thinking Fast and Slow for yourself. Finally, if you don't already have one, start a family book group. Think about it. Please join in singing the hymn, Part of the Whole, written by our own Lee Morris. The words are printed in your order of service.
These closing words are from the poem Praying, from the book Thirst of Mary Oliver. Praying. It doesn't have to be the blue iris. It could be weeds in a vacant lot, or a few small stones. Just pay attention. Then patch a few words together and don't try to make them elaborate. This isn't a contest, but the doorway into thanks and a silence in which another voice may speak.
You better think about what you're trying to do to me. Think, let your mind go, let yourself be free. Let's go back, let's go back, let's go back to way back when I didn't even know you, you couldn't have been much more than 10. Now I ain't no psychiatrist, I ain't no doctor with degrees, but it don't take too much high IQ to see what you're doing to me. Yeah, you better think about what you're trying to do to me. Oh, think, let your mind go, let yourself be free. Oh, freedom, 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 oh, freedom, 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 yeah, freedom. Hey, think about it, you think about it. There ain't nothing you could ask, I could answer you, but I won't. But I was gonna change, but now I'm not, 'cause you keep doing things I don't. Yeah, think about what you're trying to do to me. Oh, think, let your mind go, let yourself be free. People walking around every day playing games and taking scores, trying to make other people lose their mind, but be careful you don't lose yours. Yeah, you better think about what you're trying to do to me. Oh, think, let your mind go, let yourself be free. You need me, and I need you. Without each other, there ain't nothing people can do. You better think about forgiveness. Oh, think about it, baby. Yeah, freedom, 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 yeah, freedom, 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 yeah, freedom. Hey, think about forgiveness. You think about forgiveness. Oh, think about it, baby. Hey, 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 hey. Think about it. Think about it. Hey, hey. Thank you.
Well, if psychologists are right about the peak end rule, With that performance, this service should get top grades. Thank you to all the wonderful musicians who performed this morning. I also want to express my gratitude to this morning's worship associates, Maureen and Wendy, who have been tremendously helpful in shaping the service. Our words of benediction are by the Reverend Dr. Cynthia Wandrum. We leave this gathered community, but we don't leave our connection, our concerns, our care for each other. Our service to each other, to the world, and to our faith continues. Until we are together again, friends, be strong, be well, be true, be loving.